Hello, what is going on, everybody? Cool Mama Jamma here, and we are back with the third episode of RPG Speaking. I know it's been a while since I posted one of these. That's all I really have to say. If you guys want to know why it's taking me so long to get the third episode of this out, you can go ahead and check my YouTube channel at youtube.com/coolmamajamma33. Everything about that is posted there. I made a video on it at some point, like a month ago, I think. Needless to say, I haven't been very active. And remember how I said in the first episode of this that I will have people on this podcast occasionally? Well, today is not one of those days. You get to hear me speak by myself constantly because I know you guys all love that, right? And the last two podcasts weren't really... I'm not going to say they weren't RPG related. The first one was just a pilot to see how this would do, and it did better than I expected it to. Then the second one was just me telling a story from one of my D&D sessions that I was part of with Renavion, who I said I was going to try and bring on here at some point, but that's ultimately up to him whether or not he wants to be a part of this. But today we're actually going to get into some RPG speak. And today we're going to be talking about the role-playing game DEADLANDS. On my YouTube channel, I've talked about it a lot. I have a bunch of stories being told on my YouTube channel with my RPG reading series about DEADLANDS. And I even have some videos where I read all the stories of DEADLANDS, the expansions of it, and everything. But today we're just going to go through the core book, and we'll just break it down, see how it is, and you guys can let me know. This video will be posted to YouTube as well. There won't be any video, obviously, because I'm not big, per se. So I don't have the resources to do video, but I can assure you when and if I'm ever able to, I will live stream this as well. Also, my internet's really shitty, so it's amazing that I'm actually still able to upload. But, nonetheless, let's get into it. Deadlands Hell on Earth. It's it's actually an extremely good role-playing game. One of the oldest role-playing games out there, actually. It came out shortly after D&D came out. I think D&D came out in 1979, if I'm not mistaken. This came out shortly after. I don't know exactly when it came out. 98. This came out in 98, so not shortly after, but you know what I mean. Relatively soon after. It came out in the 1900s, right? This actually came out the year I was born. And this, like I said, it's a great role-playing game. Post-apocalyptic. You basically... The setting of the game is... If you've ever played Fallout, that's pretty much the setting of this game. Like, the whole story of Fallout, that's pretty much this role-playing game. And I like to think that Bethesda, Obsidian, and all of them, they got some inspiration, I guess you could say, from Deadlands, which I would like to believe, but I don't think they did, because Deadlands, believe it or not, is not a massive role-playing game. It's a tabletop role-playing game, obviously, but it's not a massive role-playing game to where you'll see people going to their local gaming store. You know, one of the ones that have, like, the back rooms where they've got people role-playing back there and all that. I mean, I've got one no more than, like, a 10-minute walk away from me. So, it's not one of the games that you'll see people role-playing back in one of those. But it's a big enough game to where old-time role-players, like Renavion, my D&D GM, he has stories. He says it in his videos at youtube.com/damsels and dingbats. Lots of YouTube plugging going on here. That this was the game where he felt that he was getting really good at being a GM. And this was the first game I decided to GM. Now, my game group, they also have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/idiotgamingcore. They were my original group, and they said that all of the sessions that they had were really good. So Deadlands being my first game that I've GM'd, even though I've only had like 4 or 5 sessions of it, being the first game that I've ever GM'd, it felt really good to get that kind of feedback. And most of it was just BS, came up off the top of my head thing. I have been writing an actual campaign. I'm like 3/4 of the way done with it after like a year of writing it, because writing a good campaign, a good tabletop RPG campaign, is more difficult than people think, especially if you didn't go to school to become a writer specifically. I personally did not go to school to become a writer. I would have loved to, but it just wasn't in my playbook, I guess you can say. I mean, oh, sorry about that. It's not just wasn't one of the career choices I had at the top of my head. Looking back at it now, I wouldn't mind being going to school to be a writer, but I'm happy where I'm at, fixing computers, building computers, doing all that kinds of stuff, and hoping to further my career in the long run. But regardless, Deadlands, before we get off track. Yeah, great. Like I said, great role-playing game. And like I said, I want Fallout 4 to be based off this, but I don't think it is. So the whole premise of it is this post-apocalyptic war wasteland. The year's 1994. 1994. What the fuck? 2094. So a lot later in the timeline of Fallout. So it's easy to believe that Fallout got its game, I guess you can say, from this. But I think the first Fallout game came out before this. So I'm not entirely sure. I'll have to fact check that. Let me fact check that real quick. Fallout timeline. Alright, that doesn't help me at all. That really doesn't help me at all, actually. Regardless, I'm pretty sure the first Fallout game came out before this. Before Deadlands came out. Which, like I said, makes it hard to believe that Fallout got its name from Deadlands. Here, let me look this up. You'd think I'd know my stuff about Fallout, considering I'm a fanboy over it, but I don't. I wouldn't really call myself a fanboy. I enjoy the games. When did the first Fallout game come out? 1997. So yeah, the first Fallout game, Fallout 1, came out a year before this did. So highly doubt that game got its name from this. Even Fallout 2, it's kind of hard to believe that it got its name from this. But the rest of the Fallouts could have easily gotten its name from this because of all the similarities. So it's a post-apocalyptic world where in the United States, specifically in California, they discovered this new material called ghost rock. And ghost rock, it's like 100 times more powerful than fossil fuels and like a bunch of like most power back in like this time. Like I think it's like 100 times better than fossil fuel, nuclear fuel, hydraulic fuel, all that shit. Hydraulic? I don't think that's the right word. Hydro fuel, I guess you can say. And basically, What the fuck? Basically, the country, every country wanted its hands on this ghost rock, and the United States, mainly since it was discovered, wanted it. So they started trading with all these different countries and everything, and then there was the resource of the ghost rock, not all of the ghost rock, but a lot of main resources started to deplete. So they there was a massive war broke out, and it turned into an alliance battle between North and South. Let me see if I can't find who were on the alliances in the book. So each alliance obviously had their each alliance was different countries, and each country brought its own shit into the war, and it turned into this massive, giant, fucking just war. You know, like it literally created a nuclear war, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, nuclear war, that sounds inevitable, and we can rebuild after that." Well, yeah, you can rebuild after that, but this nuclear war was different because the United States was trading ghost rock with all of these different countries. When this war broke out, each country quickly sped to make nuclear bombs fused with this ghost rock. And because it's so much more powerful than nuclear power, they made massive bombs that spread 10 times farther and did 10 times more damage than normal nuclear bombs were. And so, I don't think it's in this book where the alliances are. This is the core rule book. It's probably in one of the expansions. But it's it created this everything just blew up. Like every country just like ceased to exist at that point. Like, and the countries were still there, but there were very few governments. There were any government that still stood collapsed like very soon after because of the pure anarchy. There were then new governments started building themselves up, and they were quickly shot to the ground by all these new mutants that were coming into the world, and it was just pure chaos. And this whole thing, then just to make things worse, a lot of this was started by the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Now you're probably thinking, well, that came out of nowhere. Where'd that come from? Well, the story has it in Deadlands that back during the Civil War, the Civil War of America, the Union and the Confederates were going at it, and they were pushing all these Indians off their land and killing them basically. So this Indian shaman who had enough of it, did a ritual to summon all four horsemen, and they basically just ran roughshod over the United States. They got teleported into time and then ran roughshod through the United States, which then brought this nuclear apocalypse. And they ran roughshod around the world, actually, because they're the four horsemen. And what are you going to do to stop them? You won't know it's them. It's just pure bad luck. But they ran roughshod around the world, which led to this nuclear war, which leads us to Deadlands. So you've got this undestroyable force of the four horsemen, which are still around in the wasteland. Nobody knows where they are. And this huge thing of nuclear wasteland that has raiders. You got people just trying to make it by. You've got leaders, like evil leaders, trying to build up, I guess, a reputation for themselves, and just like make them leaders again. You know, they're trying to make themselves leaders and these huge powerhouses that will make people want to go to them, and then they can become this huge overlord of this certain spot. And there are plenty of those in Deadlands. There's plus all the expansions. There's one that I can't find. It's not. I don't think. Like I said, I don't think a lot of this is in the core rulebook. But there's a evil witch doctor. Witch doctor? I don't think it was witch doctor. I think it's what's called a psyker. That builds up this army of basically Terminators. Then you've still got each alliance that's still present. They are still present, but they are extremely weak and they can't fight each other anymore. Hellstrom. You've got Hellstrom that's this big industry that are just going through let me see what it says here. Hellstrom is the evil scientist who is building up this army of, like I said, basically Terminators. And there are numerous different groups of heroes and villains. Like you've got the Psychers, who mainly use magic, and they use mind control magic, and they go through running roughshod on certain cities and loot them. Then you've got people like you got the Law Dogs, who are literally what it says. Marshals, Pinkertons, firemen, any former policeman, anybody who who vowed to protect people, turned into these people called Law Dogs, and they would basically go wherever anyone that needed help. Like they would go anywhere if someone asked for help. Like if you played Fallout 4, they're like the Minutemen. Then you got the Templars, who are basically Law Dogs, but what the Law Dogs do is, like I said, they just go anywhere when they ask for help. The Templars, on the other hand, send an agent undercover into the city to see if they are worthy of help. Like, if you've got, I don't know, I'll give an example from my old campaign that I made off the top of my head in my first few Deadland sessions. There was this town called Kohlberg. They were simple miners. They had a coal mine, very prosperous coal mine that they came across, and they managed to live off of trading coal with nearby cities, towns, tribes, and all that. And if they ask for help and the Templars win... Alright, sorry, I'm back. Sorry, I'm back. You guys probably stopped listening at this point. But I accidentally stopped recording there for some reason. I don't know why. But anyways, we were at the Templars. And like I said, the Templars would have helped the town of Kohlberg because they were nice people. They were just making their lives worth living, you know? They were trying to just make it through the day, and, you know, like I said, they were just nice people. They accommodated my Deadlands group with a full-fledged house for killing a monster, which I guess isn't surprising in a post-apocalyptic world, but they're just nice people. So the Templars would help them fend off like raider attacks and whatnot. But if you went to a town, say, that was full of gambling, prostitution, just crime-ridden, then the Templars would not help them. That agent would leave and tell the Templars that would help them that they're not worth helping. So they're kind of the necessary evil. I guess you can... Not the necessary evil. They're kind of the... They're just kind of this... They're the group that is, like... They're the control group, I guess you could say. They help determine... They're... I guess the best way to put this is that they're the natural selection of the world. Like, if your town does stupid shit that makes you not worthy of being saved by the Templars, then in their eyes you don't deserve to live. So they're in a way trying to make the wasteland a better place. So you've got that going. Then you've got the Doomsayers, which are pretty much all magic. They're like, if you ever played D&D, they're like the sorcerers. They're the mages. They're the wizards. More sorcerers than anything. Um, most of them, most of them are evil. Um, but yeah, all Doomsayers are evil, but there's also Doomslayers who are basically good guy Doomsayers. Like, Doomsayers are the bad paladins, and Doomslayers are the good paladins. Or I guess a better way to put it is Doomsayers are the sorcerers, and Doomslayers are the wizards, I guess you can say. Because, wizards are generally good, and sorcerers are generally evil. But regardless, you got the Doomsayers who, like I said, are mainly magic. And they use this magic to... They go out... They're like raider parties. They don't go out of their way to take out... they do go out of their way to take out cities and like friendly towns. So they're like the raiders. These are the people that the Templars and the Law Dogs would try to protect towns and cities against. Just like the Doomslayers, the Doomslayers turn their back on the Doomsayer way, and they are now in a civil war. I guess you could say Doomsayers versus Doomslayers. Then you've got all of these numerous different like landmarks in the country. Most of this is on the west, by the way. I'll get to what happened in the east in a little bit. But on the west, you've got the Maze, which is just this massive community that has been fought over numerous times. Then you've got the Deseret, which Mormons have mainly taken over and used that for their, things. But that's also the area where that's blocked off by Hellstrom, because Hellstrom put up this force field shield type thing, which won't allow anybody except for his Terminators into the city. And by the city, I mean Denver. That's where Hellstrom has all of his factories, and he's just pumping out all of these Terminators and everything that are just wreaking havoc amongst the world. Then you've got the Indians, which, they're Indians. Like, not too much else to say. They're set in the old ways of the Confederacy, of, like, way back during the Civil War. This is a group. I don't know why it's in the area with all of the places, but whatever. That's something I just noticed. But regardless, it's not sidetracked. The Indians are basically trying to hold on to the old ways as much as possible. They're a neutral group, pretty much. They don't go out of their way to attack people, but they don't go out of their way to save people either. Then you've got the whole story of Welcome to Hell, which is just telling you how to play the game. Not much else to this book. You've got... This is something worth noting, though. You have got edges and hindrances in this game, and they basically sound exactly like they sound. Edges are basically... they're good traits. They give you advantages in certain things. Like, let me find one here. Shit. Well, let's start at hindrances first, because that's the first one you start off with. You've got hindrances. One of these, which obviously are the bad things that you have to get. Like, you have to have... There's points that you have to put in each of them. Each of these edges and hindrances range from 1 point to 5 points, and some of them have, like, you can put either 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 points in. Like this first one for hindrances, you can put 1 point, 3 points, or 5 points in. And the higher the number, the more severe the hindrance is going to be, or the higher the number, the better the effect of the edge is going to be. Like, the first hindrance I have here, the first hindrance of the book is ailin. And ailin basically gives you a disease or a sickness. So, say you put 1 point in ailin. You'll have a minor ailment, and that would be, allergies, asthma, cold, or hives, but it's incurable. So you will have a -1 penalty to that, which it's -1 to all of your checks. So then if you put 3 points in, you have a chronic disease, which is early stages of fatal diseases, ghosts, rock fever, or radiation sickness, which is not good. All that gives you a -3 to your rolls. And then you've got fatal ailments, which are AIDS, cancer, tummy twisters, and those ailments can kill you. Now, a lot of these ailments, you have to roll for for these ailments, and if you fail, like if you have a 1 in an ailment, you have to roll. I think it's once a day. Or no, it's at the. I think it's the beginning of. It's at the beginning of every session. So at the beginning of the session, if somebody has an ailment of 1, they would have to roll You'd have to roll a dice. I believe it's a D10. I want to say. Not sure. I'll figure that out at some point. But you have to roll it, and you have to get over a 5 on your check to be able to not die. Like if you have a 1, like I said, if you have a 1 ailment, then you will, and you fail the roll, it'll go up to a chronic ailment, and that will be a lot harder to not die from, and it'll go up in like the severeness. Then if you fail your chronic ailment check, then it'll go up to a fatal ailment. Like in order to fail a chronic ailment check, you have to roll below a 7. That was weird. I heard something. I think it's just my cat. And if you fail that, like I said, you'll go up to fatal, which in order to complete that check, you have to roll above a 9 at the beginning of the session. If you fail that, your character is dead. The only way to bring him back is with some form of necromancy, but unless your party knows of a necromancer, or you have a necromancer in your group, which are mainly doomsayers, doomslayers, psychers, all those guys, at least in the core book, those are the people that can do that, you're dead. So that's an example of a hindrance. Another one is curious, which some of you might ask, how is that a hindrance? Well, let me read you what it says. If it killed the cat, think what it can do to you. Your hero wants to know all he can about just about everything. About just about everything, yeah, that's what it says. Comes across just about everything he comes across every time. Anytime a mystery presents itself, he must do everything in his power to try and solve it, no matter how dangerous the situation might be. That is 3 points, and that's only 3 points. So if you do that, then that means your character will delve into dangerous situations, like if you're at a cave that you don't know what's in there. If somebody has the curious trait, they will be forced to go into the cave and look, and it could be booby trapped. There could be a fucking blood wolf there. Who knows? So that's another one. Some of the edges. Let's head over to the edges parts. Lots of hindrances. Here we are, edges. Edges are bonuses, like I said. An example of edges would be belongings. You could put a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 in there. If you put a 1 in there, you get you start off with $1,000, 2, 2,000, 3, 3,000, 4, 4,000, etc. That's the amount of money you get to start with to get like weapons, armor, vehicles if you want, because there are vehicles in this game. And that's pretty much it. You get more money to start off with. Most people get that one, so they start off with $5,000, so that way they can get the best gear they possibly can and as much ammo as they possibly can, and then they save what money they have left. Then you've got another one, which is, let's say, I don't know, mechanically inclined. That's 1 point and 1 point only. If you put the 1 point in that, then you will, you know, like it says in itself, you know machines and everything, and you get a +2 to all mechanic rolls, any rolls involving fixing or understanding machinery. So that can help out in certain situations, like if a car breaks down, or if you have to fix a robot, like some sort of protecting robot or whatever. That can help. And that's pretty much it for that. There's also a bunch of stuff like backgrounds. You got a bunch of gear that you can get. Then it goes into the archetypes, which are the good guys, I guess you can say, or they're basically the classes. Think about it that way. They are the classes of Deadlands. So, you know, they work. There's the Psyker, hit my mic, sorry about that. Savages, Indian Braves, the Law Dog. You can base your character off of these. There are actual stats for this, but you can base your character off of these, but most people don't, because they would rather actually build their character up normally. But you can just use one of these if you want to. So that's pretty cool. You've got Old Soldier, which that's what it says. It's an old soldier. Savages, Tale Tellers, which are they're basically the medics and everything. Then you obviously got the Templars. Then I believe there are enemies that you can fight. I gotta find those real quick. Just making this go longer because why the fuck not? Where are you? You know what? I'm just gonna look it up in the table of contents because that's the easy thing to do. If I can get to the table of contents, there we go. Oh, you know what? It's not in this book either. I am an idiot. Or no, they are in this book. Page 205. I'm thinking of, you guys, I haven't looked in these books in a while, so. Like, I've looked in the expansion books, because that's what my campaign's based on, but I haven't looked in this core rule book in a while. So you got the bad guys, is what they're called. The Automatrons, which are the Terminators. You've got, like, Blast Shadows, which can attach themselves to a victim, and you would never know. And they will cause weaknesses. They will cause radiation poisoning and all that good shit. Blood Wolves, which I talked about earlier, like 5 minutes ago. Not even, probably. Which are a werewolf-vampire hybrid, which are incredibly terrifying. You've got the Doom Bringers. You've got Night Terrors, which are giant bat vampire gargoyle creatures. Shreks, which are land sharks, literally. Trogs, which are just giant mutated frogs. Toxic zombies. Wormlings, which are just walking worms, and then Walking Dead, which are obviously zombies. And then in the back, I love how it's in the back. It says Deadlands Lost Colony, which is an expansion, which I do not believe I have. Coming in the summer of 2000. So if that's any idea on how old this video game, this tabletop game is, that should be a very good indicator. But that's pretty much it with the core rulebook of Deadlands. Not much else to go into besides like fear levels and whatnot, but that shit's not important right now, or at all. There's some other things that are in this book, that I could go over, but then that would make this podcast extremely long, and I don't want it to be extremely long. Like, an hour is probably the longest I'll go. I don't even think this podcast alone is an hour. I think it's probably like, I don't know, 20, 40, 30, 40 minutes. Something like that. But I will probably go over the entire book on my YouTube channel, which, like I said, youtube.com/coolmanjam33. So, yeah, that's probably going to be it for this video. This podcast. Like I said, this podcast will be uploaded at my YouTube channel, and it's also going to be uploaded at Google Play, iTunes, as well as numerous other ones, which I can't think of at the moment because I have not used them in a while. So, thank you guys. Ow, hit my table. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to this podcast. I keep saying watching because I'm in YouTube mode right now because I just got done recording a video. So, thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast. If you did enjoy it, please make sure to tell all of your friends about it. For those of you watching on YouTube, please like the video and comment what you liked about it. Like, if you would ever think about Deadlands, if you have any questions about Deadlands, I would be happy to answer them in the comments below. I try to respond to as many comments as possible, so, you know. But, yeah. In the next podcast, we will probably dive even deeper into Deadlands, probably go into the expansions, and who knows, maybe I'll have a guest next podcast. The world may never know. With that being said, thank you guys all so much for watching and listening. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you have not already, and if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please go do so at, like I said, once again, youtube.com/coolmanjam33. If you guys are already on my YouTube channel, then please hit that subscribe button. It helps me out a lot. So, thank you guys so much for watching and listening, and I'll see you next time.